Well, hello, a very good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Adrian Reed, and a very warm welcome to this sort of short espresso sized chat where we're going to be talking about product ownership and product management. So, if you are attending live, as I know many of you do, please do say hello in the chat. When you have questions, ask them in the chat and we can bring them up on the screen. If you do type them in on the chat, we may bring your photo up as well, so be aware that your photo may be on the recording depending on your LinkedIn session. And I'm really pleased to say that we have Kent McDonald with us today, that many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with. He has a fantastic blog at insideproduct.co, and has also written a number of books, including Stand Back and Deliver, How to Be an Agile Business Analyst and Beyond Requirements, amongst many other things. And of course, alongside all of that is a leading practitioner in the topics we're going to talk about. And in fact, Kent, you're giving a presentation at the Building Business Capability Conference, the BBC, which is, of course, the official conference of the IIBA in Vegas. And it's entitled From BA to Product Owner to Product Manager. I have to stop myself saying project manager. It's from BA to Product Owner to Product Manager. So what inspired that title? I'm guessing it was your career path, but was that the inspiration?
It pretty much was. And thanks for having me on. I have had a winding road of a career path, but basically that title pretty much described how it went. And part of that was because I was a BA before the concept of product owner existed, and certainly before people thought to have product managers inside their organization working on stuff that their employees use. So definitely that was the inspiration for it.
Fantastic. And a question I'm sure will be on many people's lips as they watch this session is, so what is a product owner? What is a product manager? How are they different? How are they the same? How would you describe those things?
Yep. So I'm gonna start with what a product manager is, because as it turns out, product owner is a subset of that. So product manager it originally came about in consumer product goods, where they were trying to figure out how to really kind of drive their individual products forward. And as software products became to be a thing, the role of product manager really came about from that. And the best way to describe what a product manager does is they try to solve problems for their clients or their customers in ways that's helpful for the business. So they have to balance what's good for their customer, what helps them solve problems, but at the same time makes sense for the business to do. So most product managers that you hear about are usually working on stuff that their company sells to other people. But lately, as organizations have started going through these transformations that they're trying to make their inside products, their internal products, more useful and more effective, they've realized that, well, we did this agile software development thing and that works pretty good for building software, but we aren't always building the right things. So what else can we figure out? And they start using a lot of those product management techniques of doing discovery and figuring out what problems are we trying to solve and what outcomes are we trying to help people get to start kind of describing and figuring out what should we be building for our folks, our internal employees to be using. So that's what product management is at a very high level. Product ownership is effectively the part of product management that's mostly dealing with the team that's building the solution. It originally came about as a result of teams using the Scrum framework. And so they the folks that created Scrum created the proper role, and they came up with that title because they wanted that role name, because they wanted to differentiate it from other roles such as project manager or other types of things like that. But what it comes down to is that's the individual that is working closely with the product team to develop a solution. There's a lot of product management that typical, if you were to go to a 2-day product owner course, doesn't cover. A lot of the discovery, figuring out, are we building the right thing? The Scrum guide mentions, oh yeah, the product owner should do those things, but doesn't provide any real guidance as to how it's done. And when you see product owners in practice, they are usually joined at the hip with the development team, which means they don't always have the time available to go out and really understand what the market is telling them.
That's really interesting, Kent. So I think if I'm understanding correctly, there you're saying that the product manager will need to have that holistic external view of what the market needs, and also to be looking at like their horizon is going to be potentially quite a long horizon, thinking on that strategic view. That needs to connect with what the product owner does, but the product owner is going to be essentially working with the delivery engine of whatever change, software change or whatever needs to happen in order to enable that bigger strategic thing. So is it fair to say that the product owner will be connected with that longer strategic pathway, but they're likely to have a shorter delivery horizon? Do you think that's fair?
That's assuming that if you have both different people filling those two roles.
Yes.
So and the one of the find it somewhat interesting, although the answers have gotten kind of repetitive. One of the biggest arguments that's been going on in the product space is what's the product owner, what's a product manager? Are they the same? Are they different? Should you have both? And depending on which community the person that's answering those questions hangs out in, you're different answers, right? So most folks in the product management space would say, ideally, you don't have split responsibilities. Ideally, you have a product person that is simultaneously keeping an eye on kind of the outside the market, that longer horizon viewpoint, trying to figure out what problems are we trying to solve, and working with the team that is coming up with solutions and delivering those solutions. Reason being that you want to have the same person doing that is you avoid that game of telephone where wires get crossed and the messages get mixed up. If you talk to some of the Agile community, they're going to say, oh, yeah, but product owners do all that. They do, really. We don't train you about that in the CSPO class, but trust me, they do it. In reality, oftentimes what you'll see is there's different models where some organizations have product managers that do all of those things. There's others where there's product managers that are explicitly focusing on the outside view, and product owners that are more focused on working directly with teams. And so as you were talking about, in that situation, if an organization is using that model, yes, you would want those two folks to be joined at the hip so that you have as little miscommunication as possible. And ideally, the product owner is also getting exposure to the customers as well. And frankly, if you really are doing things the way you'd really hope to be doing it, you've actually are incorporating the team. And so developers, designers are all getting exposure to what your customers are looking for that you're trying to build for.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I think echoes a comment that Canny's made about that smooth transition between, the different elements of the role or roles. And I guess that's the whole thing. It's like, it's the role, not the title kind of element, that kind of territory. Which brings me on to the next question, because of course a lot of people I'm sure tuned into this will be business analysts. And I know in your abstract for your session at the BBC, you mentioned that this could be an area of interest for BAs. So, I'm listening to this as a BA thinking, yeah, there's a lot of similarity there with what a good BA would do in terms of holistic thinking, some of the strategic thinking as well. So what would you say BAs should be thinking about? How should they be connecting with this world?
And that's kind of how I got there. In fact, back in 2007, I kind of took the angle that says, and this was because this idea was way new then, was there is a PM role, a PM job title that is a great fit for the business analysis career ladder. It's not project management, which at that time, everybody used to think. In fact, I went through the thing where I got into business analyst because the consulting company I was working for said, we know you've done project management in automotive, but you haven't done it in IT. So to train you on IT, we're going to have you do this business analysis thing first.
We're going to have you doing a completely different role.
And then we'll move you into project management. And as it turned out, I enjoyed the business analysis stuff a heck of a lot more. But there's a huge overlap between what business analysts do and how they think and how they look at things and what product managers do. The big difference is that product managers are expected to be making decisions. So that's one where business analysts often are at the most making sure decisions get made, pulling information together and providing them to decision makers. The other big thing is, and this is not by fault of the business analysts themselves, it's the nature of the type of work they're being asked to do. Most often, business analysts typically are on teams that are handed a solution to do. Often they're paired with a project manager to do those types of things. Product managers, on the other hand, one of their key responsibilities is understanding what problem they're trying to solve and then working with the team to figure out what solution should we deliver. So a big switch for business analysts, fortunately, they have all the tools necessary to do this, is trying to really understand the problem they're trying to solve. So all of those times, Adrian, in your classes and when you've been consulting with people and business analysts and telling them you need to think about the problem you're trying to solve, what you're really trying to do is say, act like a product manager. You just didn't realize, maybe. I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah. That's really interesting, and I think that will be music to the ears of many BAs on listening to this. That element of getting that, whatever we call it, that problem analysis, strategy analysis, enterprise analysis. It's been called many things by different organizations over the time, but that like understanding the mess, normally understanding the different perspectives and the mess that's going on there. One of the books you wrote was How to Be an Agile BA. So how would you say agile and/or agility in the macro level fits in with this shift towards product management and ownership and so on?
As it happens, we talked about this beforehand, and I've come to the point now where I just inherently operate in an agile fashion. So it actually strikes me when people kind of explicitly step it outside, saying, "So how does agile fit into this?" I would say that modern product management relies heavily on, and it just assumes that agile is the approach used to develop the software, because part of understanding what problem you're trying to solve is also realizing is you're not going to completely understand that problem when you start out. In order to really understand it, you're learning throughout the entire process as you're actually building your solution. So you're going to be much better off if you can create a small portion of your solution, get it out to your customers, see how they're using it, get feedback, and make adjustments based on what you find out, what you learn, and tweak things. You're learning more about the problem, you're learning more about the solution, and you're constantly iterating. And it also helps the whole experimentation approach, which is also kind of a key aspect of modern product management, if you will. So Agile's inherently important, but it's not sufficient to effectively deliver products. You need that discovery that goes along with it.
Yeah. That's really interesting, Kent, and a whole nother wider topic, but that agile delivery engine, and then the organizational agility to see outside and see what's coming. And as we're talking, I can absolutely see how the product management will fit at that macro level, and the agile methods in terms of Scrum or Kanban or whatever, working at the sort of delivery element as well. And that feedback ripple, like a two-way, there's communication in terms of the feedback from stuff that's coming up and both ways. Canny's added another really great comment here that the product manager identifies and the BA solves, which is an interesting observation. Again, I guess, Ken, it depends if the BA or the PM are the same person or a different person or whatever, but an interesting angle as well. So without spoiling too much about your session at the conference, if there was one takeaway that people are going to get from it, what's that takeaway going to be?
I think the takeaway that I would hope people get out of it is that it's definitely possible for business analysts to move into product management type opportunities, whether that is product management working on what you would think of as internal products, so things that are used inside of an organization, or products that your company is selling. And I think that looking for the types of opportunities is a great way to really move your career forward in a very rich, fulfilling, and lucrative fashion.
Fantastic. So forward looking and thinking about the career and next steps. And finally, just before we sort of move towards closing, Ken, I mean, the conference itself, why would you say that BAs or professionals should attend conferences like the BBC? Clearly, it's a chunk of time out of the office. What would you say that the benefit is?
I have had the opportunity to and attend tons of conferences, all related around either business analysis. I've been to BBC several times and other things. The main reason I go back to these conferences is the opportunity, one, to meet new people. And once I've done that, is to go back and actually catch up with them. So, for example, Adrian, I met you and I met at BBC,
Yep,
we always take advantage of the conferences to catch up and see how everyone's doing. The networks you can create there, and thank goodness we're able to get back to in-person stuff, is phenomenal. It's very helpful, and it can lead to a lot of great benefits on an ongoing basis. Most of my really key aspects of my professional network have been people I have met at one conference or another.
Yeah, it's always amazing. I always find that the content is fantastic and the sessions are fantastic, and the conversations over coffee that you don't know you were going to have are this like even better in many ways. So if you're watching and you're interested, do check out buildingbusinesscapability.com. It's a fantastic conference. Do check it out. And Ken, I'm sure people want to know more about how they can stay in touch, how they can read your blog. How can people connect with you?
The best places to do that right now, I'm kind of in the midst of renovating some of my online residences, if you will. The best places to keep in touch with me are either on LinkedIn, or which you can get since you kind of came to this session, or show up at my blog, insideproduct.co. Those are the two best places to see what I'm up to. Of course, the LinkedIn is going to be a bit more interactive, but in product, I'm publishing all my latest stuff out there, including you can sign up for a newsletter that I've just switched to bi-weekly, so I can make sure that I produce good quality content without trying to, just overburden myself with too much work.
But bi-weekly is still that's still a lot of work, Ken. I mean, but kudos to you for doing that. So fantastic. Well, thanks. I mean, so much more we could talk about, and I'm sure we will at another point. But thanks for taking the time. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat. If you are watching this live or the recording, do connect with connect with Kent, and do take a look at his blog as well, and keep an eye on the LinkedIn Live. We'll be trying to connect with as many people as we can before and during the conference. But until next time, bye for now. Thanks again, Kent. Bye for now.
All right. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for having me on.